What's going on, good people? Welcome to this edition of I Said What I Said. Today is Monday, June 15th. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We get together right here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 1 p.m. Central Time. And we talk about things that are impacting the Black community, both as individually, but also as a collective. And then we try to get to some places where we can find some real solutions and some action steps to try to overcome some of those things, again, as individuals, but perhaps more importantly, as a collective. So thank y'all so much for choosing to tune in. This is an open conversation. We welcome your input. It's valued. It's appreciated. So anytime you want, as we go through the conversation, feel free to leave your comments. We will read through them We'll read through as many as we possibly can. Also, we ask you to share the page, share this conversation. We continue to try and grow this conversation, continue to try to bring as many like-minded individuals into the fold with the hope that will give us the best opportunity for finding the proper solutions to go forward. So please take the time to share the page. Invite anybody that you think will either find this conversation valuable or add value to it themselves. A few things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the fact that yesterday, June 14th, was designated and celebrated as Barack Obama Day. It was in a mocking protest to Donald Trump. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the murder of Rayshard Brooks down in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are also going to talk about some of the differing opinions in terms of stances that athletes are taking, NBA players especially, about whether or not to return to the court. And so we're going to get into that as well. Those are three things we'll be talking about. Again, this is I Said What I Said. Thank you so much for tuning in. His name is Tucson Werner. My name is Herb Howard, too. What's happening, good brother?
Man, I'm cool, man. I'm in a weird place, though, man. I just was talking to my son a minute ago, and I just realized he's graduating Friday. Well, I didn't just realize that, but it's interesting, man, because it's not like the graduation spirit. You know what I mean? This COVID energy is kind of different, and I still don't fully understand how what graduation looks like in regards to like the ceremonial process. So just weird, man. It's a weird feeling, man. It's, I wasn't tripping over COVID or the response to COVID for a while, but now, like in this last week, I'm like, damn, man, it's really deprived some of that opportunity. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because I could tell that he doesn't see the value in it at all. It's like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's interesting. But other than that, man, I'm cool, man. What about you?
I'm doing, pretty good, man. Some, good days, bad days. I've been feeling pretty good here lately, though. Not a whole lot going on, man. Just trying to stay focused, figure out exactly what my lane is, and stay focused in it, man. So I'm feeling pretty good. Being even more so intentional about what I do with my dollars in terms of supporting Black businesses and those types of things. Shout out to South Shore Brew, the coffee shop that's right there on 71st and Yates. Went there this morning, and I thought it was conspicuously timed that right outside their street, as you like on Exchange, they do all this kind of street construction right now where you can't come down the block where their front doors at. I thought that was interesting timing to inconvenience them in that way. But anyway, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, man. They say 40% of Black business won't survive COVID, And if 40% of Black business won't survive COVID, that's a problem because even before COVID, you got to realize that we were at such a disadvantage in regards to like capitalization of companies and entrepreneurship that Black business doesn't really exist in the first place. So right. to lose 40% of the Black businesses that we have, that's a humongous number, man. When you think about it, like I think they say that 85% of Black businesses are really manned by one person or less than five, at least.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
For
so
sure.
When you think about creating capital and building capital and creating jobs, we're not in a position to do that. We wasn't in a position to do that pre-COVID.
Yeah.
With COVID, it adds another level of extremities to deal with to persevere through. You know what I mean? And we be able to do that. I don't know, but that's a great segue into the conversation I wanted to start this with today because yesterday was Barack Obama Day. Right. And it was what'd you say? It was a protesting Trump's birthday or something like that. How'd you explain it?
Yeah, it was the way they were just mocking Trump. It's his birthday, so it was a mocking protest that everybody was doing against Donald Trump yesterday.
What'd you think of that?
I thought if people had fun with it, then fine. I didn't partake in it anyway. I thought it was kind of silly and goofy and emotional. But if people was having fun with it, made them feel better for a day, I say go for it. But I ain't think shit of it.
Yeah, so I guess I had issue with it though, right?
Mhm.
And I have issue with it because for me, it kind of exemplifies the level of ignorance that we operating in. You know, it exemplifies how little we really know about American government. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I said to somebody earlier today that, you know, McDonald's is McDonald's. It don't really matter who's serving you the burgers. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And when you think about, I say this too because you got to be realistic, right? The symbolism of what Barack Obama represented, man, that's valuable. You know, my kids came into a world where they only knew a black president. You know what I mean? And symbolically, because I've been in the world where I never would have assumed I'd have known that, it meant something. There's some value there, right? So I don't want to lean all the way in one way, but then there's the reality of how he governed America, right? And we have this disillusioned kind of understanding who Barack Obama was. Barack Obama was a centrist at best. You know what I mean? At best, he was not a change agent. He was a centrist at best. And what we got to recognize is that the United States government has been pushed so far right that the left is really right at this point, right? The left is really right. You know what I mean? Because we've been pushed so far right. So when you start looking at his policies, and I could go down the line, but I got in trouble a little bit earlier because today I was just like, that's some clown stuff. You know what I mean? And if we want to highlight some of the things that he did specifically, just because I know we kind of think of it like Barack Obama is like next to Jesus and Martin Luther King, and I'd argue that he's not close to neither of those men. You know what I mean? And when you start thinking about some of the policy and some of the actions that took place during his presidency, man, they were very, very harmful to our community. You know what I mean? When you think about Flint water, that's a Barack Obama situation. That's not Donald Trump. You know what I mean? That's him that went down there and pretended like that shit wasn't poison and fake drunk it. That's Barack Obama. You know, we got to be honest about that. We got to be honest about Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown. Those were Barack Obama situations. You understand? We got to be honest about his lack of engagement around those topics. We got to be honest about that. We got to be honest about his corporate bailouts of Wall Street that kind of shifted capitalization in this country to where we lost so much wealth. We lost more wealth under Barack Obama than any other president in history. I mean, our community specifically, right? During Barack Obama's tenure, Roseland was the highest foreclosed community in all of America. That's the reality, right? And this ain't just the shit on Barack Obama, though. This is the shit on everybody who posted that picture of that man like he was Jesus. Because what that really represents is how foolish we are, which is also why we going into the polling, going into November, talking about we're going to vote for Joe Biden. It's the same kind of foolish ass shit, right? It's like this, whoever's the best orator, whoever we like the most, who could I have a drink with? Man, we got to grow up our understanding of politics. We got to be much more mature in how we approach politics, right? And yeah. I'm getting to a point where I'm becoming so frustrated because when we look at the sheer numbers, I read a statistic today that says for every penny a black man has, a white man has $1. You know what I mean? When you start looking at the economics of America, man, before COVID, they was estimating by 2036 that the black community would be at a zero net worth. That's before COVID. We had 2020. We had what's that? 16 years. So with COVID, how fast you think that's? How expedient is that number going to be?
Listen, you talk about the unemployment rate being so high. You talk about losing 40% of black-owned businesses. You probably accelerate that. You probably exhausted that retirement. You know what I mean?
It's hyper at this point. You know what I mean? So when we start thinking about that, and then we parading, or at least around the net, championing Obama. You know, when people come out and say his only drawback during this whole election was wearing that tan suit. What the fuck was you paying attention to? Right? Even if you're not, and I'm on some black shit. Let's be clear, right? Whatever he is, everybody else, your bad, not my fucking problem, right? But there's a whole bunch of people who jump into that everybody book, right? There's whole people jumping into Trump's ass about ICE and deporting Hispanics and all that shit. Mm-hmm. Check Obama's records, homie.
Mm-hmm.
He deported more Hispanics than any other president in the history of America. Check his files.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I'm not saying this to continually shit on Obama. He's gone, it's the past. I don't care. But the reality of it is that same mindset is leading us toward the future where we don't really ask for shit. But a good
I think that even you talk about the Obama thing, I think that's a symptom of the larger issue of the root cause of that thing being that we prefer the convenient lie over the inconvenient truth. Like, just as people, we would rather the convenient lie than the inconvenient truth. And if we can just get back to that space where there was, hope, and there was this change was on the horizon, if you will, and just in that space. Now, it wasn't the reality. That wasn't actually happening in and around our communities, but that was the energy that was permeating through it. That's how people felt. And whether it was actually happening or not, that convenient lie felt a lot better than facing this inconvenient truth of this country ain't really fucking, it don't give a shit about you, and it don't really matter who's in that fucking Oval Office. Ain't nobody gonna be there that's gonna be serving your interests, not Trump, not Biden, not even Barack Obama. It's like, so that's a hard pill to swallow, right? That requires a reality check, and then it requires a whole lot of work for you to then figure out how to overcome that thing. And I think a lot of times, instead of facing that and being willing to put that work in, it's a little bit easier to just say, nah, I'll just believe this convenient lie that everything is kind of smooth, it's kind of decent. And harkening back to Barack's tenure, that's what it felt like. And motherfuckers want that. And it don't matter if it's about President Obama, or it don't matter if it's about Joe Biden, it don't matter if it's about the fucking Walgreens on the corner. Like, we want the fucking inconvenient, we want the convenient lie more than the inconvenient truth every time.
But every show that we have, I do the Neely Fuller, right? Every show is the most necessary statement in the history of blackness since blackness, right? Until you fully understand white supremacy, everything you think you understand will only confuse you. And we at this point where the lie is so goddamn pervasive that truth just ain't in us no more, right? We don't even look for truth anymore. We just look to fit into that convenience of the lie. And that shit is disturbing me because the odds are not in our favor, right? Like, I'm part of the first generation to make less money than their parents. You know what I mean? As a generation, that's our reality. You're part of the millennial generation. Y'all shit is worse than ours. But to the point of the fallacies, right? How the lies become so pervasive, right? There's t-shirts going around that says, what's that? We on our ancestors, you'll get these hands, or whatever the fuck it says. And I be wanting to stop them little kids wearing them shirts so bad to say, you goddamn right you ain't your ancestors. Because your goddamn ancestors was really, really, really about some action. And you really, really fucking ain't, right? I saw somebody holding a sign at one of these rallies, and it was online. Like, it said, y'all done fuck with the wrong generation. Why? Because y'all can parade in the street. And again, I don't want to just continually shit on us. But we got to elevate our understanding of what's happening here, right? And because you are walking hand in hand in the street singing and chanting, that don't change shit. It doesn't change anything. When we start talking about it, I saw a tweet that said, this week alone, every company in America has changed their brand into some Black Lives Matter shit, right? White people was washing our feet. The House and the Senate is wearing kente cloth in press conferences and kneeling and shit. And then it ended the tweet with, they're doing everything except what we're asking for. And that's the part that we keep fucking missing. We keep accepting the symbols over the substance. You know what I mean? I can't hear you.
My bad. I was muted. Yeah. But I was just agreeing. But it's the same thing you see in like different realms of our society. You take something like hip hop artists and stuff like that, or musicians nowadays, and they go in there and the label trying to get them to sign this terrible ass fucking deal. And you go in there and say, listen, I want control of my music, I want my masters, I want such and such percentage of that, such and such percentage of this. And then what you end up really with is like, nah, well, we'll buy you this car, right? We'll buy you these chains, right? We'll put you up in this crib. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, well, those things look cool, those things sound nice, but it's like, that ain't what the fuck I asked for, though. You know what I'm saying? And you accept that shit.
It's just more comfortable oppression. We just keep going with more and more comfortable oppression. But we at a point now where comfortable oppression ain't enough. And that's kind of what I mean. Like, the odds are not in our favor, man. Again, we don't give credit to not just our experience, but the times within America, right? We're entering into our fourth economic revolution. we entered into the age of automation. And as we move into the age of automation, you know, again, we got to understand that we were bought here as a service class. When they move into the age of automation, there's no more need for a service class. And as they don't need a service class, when they don't need a service class, then you have very minimal value if you don't have any wealth accumulation, right? So I've been having conversations all week with some money people in this city specific. And one of the things that we got to start understanding, because we're entering into that fourth industrial revolution, the only way we're going to be able to survive is if we lean in on one another. That's it, right? It's the instead of going to Walmart, I'm going to Mr. Johnson. It's the I'm gonna call my uncle to fix my car instead of going to Midas. You have to lean in, right? Because of all those big time or Fortune 1 and Fortune 500 companies, they're going to lean into the times, right? And as they lean into the times, that's going to dissipate the opportunity for Black people to make capital. It's going to dissipate. It just is what it is, right? So when you think of COVID, like you got all the conspiracy theories that we attach to COVID, but some of that shit is very real in my opinion, right? And I'm not saying COVID was a biological weapon because I don't have proof of it, right? But if it ain't a biological weapon, what surely happened is they took full advantage of the situation, right? And just like anything else, right? I was born in the 70s, and I'm gonna say this in correlation so we can see how this shit works. I'm born in the 70s. The first reality TV show in existence of all time was The Real World MTV, right? On The Real World MTV was the first time they really introduced a gay character on public television. You know what I mean? And not only was he a gay character, but he was a gay character that was suffering through HIV. So it was like a dramatic thing. You know what I mean? From The Real World MTV, homosexual characters on television became normalized. Well, before that, it wasn't normal. Now, this ain't about my perspective on homosexuality. It's just, it wasn't normal, right? Secondly, reality TV shows was non-existence. Now, right, you take 30 years down the line, gay characters are pervasive on TV, and reality TV is the dominant TV on TV. So what I'm saying in that vein is that they can condition your mind to accept any fucking thing. They can condition your mind to accept anything. I work in marketing. Certain colors have a certain effect on your brain. It is the truth, right? Imaging and messaging dictates behavior. That's the reality, right? Tom Burrell wrote a great book called Brainwash. Tom Burrell owned Burrell Public Relations. He talked about, and it was kind of like repentance. Like he was really apologizing to our community for the shit he pulled. You know what I mean? And he talked about how much money he made in marketing and PR, but he was selling us a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of false philosophies. You know what I mean? And we bought that shit hook, line, and sinker, right? So I'm saying the same thing is happening again. And it happens over and over. That's how they maintain control, right? We buy into these falsified theories and we run with the shit. And we're up against a time where we don't have the room for the falsified theory. You understand? 2036, zero net worth. Well, that's 2036. But today, right now, today, 60% of Black dual earning households don't bust $50,000. If you're in a major city, which most Black people are, how are you surviving at under $50,000? It's almost unfounded. I don't see how it could happen, right? So when we start thinking about the levels of crime in our community, when you start thinking about the levels of spousal abuse in our community, when you start thinking about the levels of every ill in our community, they're all in relation to poverty because that's what the fuck poverty breeds. When you start thinking about police brutality in our community, it's poverty that breeds that shit because no one's there to protect you. You can't get a fucking lawyer. They know that. They know that. They know you can't talk to your alderman. They know that. Not that you can't touch him. You could touch him. But you don't fucking matter to him because you can't donate to his campaign. He don't give a fuck what you talking about, right? And all of them situations leave us at a disadvantage. And we're out here parading for a motherfucker who put us in that position. And we about to go to the polls and vote for another motherfucker that has the same stance. We got to elevate our understanding of politics. We got to.
I think that, when we talk about, we don't have the ability to just like stay like real focus on one thing and play that thing all the way out. and we bouncing around from this thing, bouncing around from that thing. And I saw David Banner did a real cool. He put out a video I thought was on point. He was talking about if George Floyd was supposed to be the last straw, right? If he was the last straw, we weren't gonna take it no more. Then let him be the last straw and not go, jumping around from this thing to the next. And that's not to discount or disregard Rayshard getting killed down in Atlanta at all, but it is to say, like, either we was done with it or we ain't. Like, to bounce around from one thing to the next. Like, keep the energy going. Just keep the same focus on, keep doing the same things, and don't get distracted by the emotional shit. Don't get caught up in the whether it's Barack or it's Uncle Joe or any of that type of shit. Like, none of it.
No, that's real, man. But again, the enemy is playing their game too, though. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I know the system went viral last week talking about comparing racism to monopoly, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a new concept, but comparing really capitalism and racism is just the next door neighbor or the twin brother of capitalism. They conjoin at the hip, right? But that's not a new analogy. But I was just thinking about that shit in a relationship, right? I play Monopoly all the time with my children, and I play it on purpose. Because even though I think capitalism is a bullshit system, I understand where I'm at. And I got to make sure that my children understand where they at, right? But here's my children. And I love them. And I beat their ass every chance I get in Monopoly. And I love them. And it's not a moment when they can say, Daddy, let me have Boardwalk or because you love me. I ain't giving it to you. I'm going to keep whooping your ass, right? Because what you have here is a responsibility to learn the game. Mm-hmm. And if we playing and I'm just playing for the fuck of it, it's no value to me. I want you to get better so that you can compete, period. And until you compete, you're never going to beat me. My son's a standout athlete. I'm going to continue whooping his ass on that basketball court until he can beat me. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. That's the game of life, right? I often say the only question in manhood that matters is, can you whoop my ass, though? That's the reality. And that's what we up against. And instead of them fighting the fight or us fighting the fight with them, they just trinkle dangling in our face, and we change our whole perspective, right? So you washing my feet and wearing Klintekoff is offensive to me. Yeah, we in a fight, and we got to recognize that we're in a fight. We are the first generation to inherit less of the world than our parents. What the fuck you think you finna leave your children? We always talk about generational wealth. This shit irks the shit out of me too. We always talk about generational wealth. Well, I know the numbers. And the numbers say only 1% of black people make over $120,000 a year, right? When it comes to accumulated wealth, though, that's income. When it comes to accumulated wealth, the median net wealth of black families, devoid the family car, is $1,700. What are you leaving your children, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can't leave your children no money, at least leave them some fucking information. Mm-hmm. Arm them for the fight they are facing. And we've seen, and we have this philosophy where it's all entertainment with us, man. It's all theater, and it's not all theater. These motherfuckers is playing for keeps.
I think that if we was teaching information, right, if we was passing down information, then we wouldn't find ourselves also in the same position to where we are inheriting less for the first time ever. And so I think that it's, those things kind of happen together, right? Kind of happen simultaneously. We talk about, getting comfortable in that space where you feel like, okay, we've arrived in this, capitalistic society. It's like, okay, we made it, we cool now. Then you kind of relax from the things that was giving you those gains in the first place. And so after you relax on that for a generation or two, then you look up and like, oh shit, we was actually getting less out of this system than we was getting based on what we was doing before. So I think it kind of like, I don't think you can have one without the other, because if we weren't comfortable in that space, then we wouldn't have also then found ourselves in a position to where we ultimately end up with less.
Yeah, man, but it's the acceptance of it that bothers me. Oh, and I don't know if it's the acceptance of it. Maybe acceptance isn't the right word, right? It's kind of this what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like we don't even understand that it's happening. You know what I mean? We're not cognitive of the situation. It's ignorant of the situation, right? Yeah. But in that ignorance, we champion it without knowing. You know what I mean? We champion it without knowing. Somebody, again, I don't got no problem saying nothing that's on my mind publicly. You know what I mean? I know that offends a whole lot of people. and be very clear that I don't give a fuck. Right? So
I said what I said.
When I say these things, I'm often confronted. And then I double back with the reasoning that I say these things, because my shit ain't flippant. I don't just say shit off the cuff.
Right.
Right? I read, I do research. I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And be clear. I'm interested because I realize the effects that it has on my life and my future and my family's life and my family's future. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not a fucking politician. I ain't never ran for office in my life. I have no desire to run for office. But I understand that politics is the engine that runs business. Mm-hmm. Right? It's interesting to me that 99% of our goddamn conversations is about money and sex. Money and relationships, right?
Yeah.
Right? And the politics of this country dictates both of those things in our communities. Mm-hmm. Money and relationships. Mm-hmm. It controls both of them. Mm-hmm. But we don't have no understanding of politics, which really trickles down to we don't have no understanding of money or relationships, which is why we have such a failed community, right? So the shit drives me insane.
Skin this cat another way, though. What if it's? So you say that the politics controls money and relationships.
Absolutely.
What if money controls politics?
It doesn't, though.
You know what I'm saying? Like who got the money influences the decision makers and the policy makers, right? Mm-hmm. So is money controlling government, or is government controlling money? And when do those lines kind of switch? When do they get blurred in that way? And then I think the relationships is happening all throughout it. I'm kind of in a space where all three of them, I see all three of them like interconnected, like working together.
You remember Dick Cheney, George Bush's vice president?
Of course. Do
you know he was also the president of Enron?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he was. You know how much money fucking Enron makes a year?
Yeah.
You can't even count that shit, right?
Yeah.
So in what world does lightning strike twice like that? You so motherfucking cold that you become the president of Enron.
That's what I'm saying.
And the vice president of the United States of America.
So which one came first?
The political connectivity came first. It always comes first.
He was the president of Enron after he was VP?
Huh?
He was president of Enron after he was VP?
No, he was president of Enron before he became the VP.
Of course.
But his relationships to politics was way before that. There's not a member of the House or the Senate that's not a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
So what they do is they create policy to reinforce their profit. That's how you dictate the game. Laws are for poor people.
Sure.
Right?
And you ensure and you make sure the laws are for poor people because you are rich people.
You say what?
If I'm rich people,
how do you become the rich people?
I don't think that comes first. I don't think
it came first. It came first. That's why the nuance of the context of the conversation, right? It was illegal to hide a slave. It was legal to be a slave.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So who created those laws?
People who had
and when they created those laws, what happened?
Listen, the people who had the slaves created the laws.
And what happened?
What you mean?
They profited immensely.
Yeah, but I'm saying they already had the bread. Laws. They already had the bread. So like you just said.
No, they didn't already have the bread.
Like you just said, everybody in Congress is a millionaire, right? Mm-hmm. But every millionaire ain't in politics. You know what I'm saying? So you can like, if you're gonna get to the politics, you definitely came from the bread. But you can get to the bread without coming from the politics, is what I'm saying. Like.
So again, but it's about policy though. It shapes the laws for you to get to the bread. It's about policy and timing, right? I just said that we walking into the fourth industrial revolution, right? I want you to put something in perspective. When you think about Jay-Z, right? And we're gonna think about black people because it's easy to understand it from this perspective. You think about Jay-Z, you think about what's my man's name in the West Coast, the biggest guy, producer. Dre. You think about Baby from Cash Money, right? You think about Puffy. Those are probably the four biggest moguls in hip hop, right? Mm-hmm. All of them was born 2 years apart from each other. Mm-hmm. You understand that? Now they make the biggest entertainers in rap music. Kanye is bigger than all four of them. legitimately bigger from record sales, the viability, everything. But he's not. He doesn't understand. He doesn't have the capital they have. Do you know why?
Why?
Because policy. Period. Right. What they do is they dominate, create industries, and then they create strangleholds on containing those industries through legislation. When they find out the money's here, I'm going to stranglehold the legislation around every industry I want to. And I'm going to dictate the game. Just like Monopoly. If I own all the property and your ass is just on the board, you're stuck. You can't, there's no way you can get into the game. There's no way you can get into the game because I dictate the rules. And I'm not saying like a government, but I own everything already. I own everything already. So I see Dub just said that Kanye's a billionaire though too. That's arguable, but what's that mean though? And that's another thing we have to start having to understand about what money looks like. We got to understand what money looks like. We say Kanye's a billionaire. First of all, let's do the real math. There's 44 million African Americans in this country. Out of that 44 million African Americans in this country, there are like 300,000 millionaires. With 300,000 millionaires out of 44 million people, out of all of our 300,000 millionaires, the black millionaires, all of them max out at like 1 or 2 million. Nobody gets above that, right? Whereas when you do the math and juxtapose it to the white millionaires, it's like, I can't even remember the number, but it's extremely different. It's way higher, right? So we don't understand how capitalization works. Even the fact that we say Kanye's a billionaire, or the fact that we talk about the NBA ball players as millionaires, right? In context to what real money looks like, they're not on the board, right? So you got 15 ball players on the squad that's making XYZ $1 million. How much money does the owner make? How much money is he capitalizing on? So again, it's not about not having money, not avoiding money. That's not the conversation. We do need to get to the cash. We do need to get to the cash. That's part of the conversation. But how we get to the cash is through community. Community grows cash. Cash don't grow community. That's why I keep saying politics is the engine that runs business. Business is not the engine that runs politics. We're wrong about that. It's not true. In that vein, man, how we address this going forward, and this is what the real conversation was about for me all day, is that we got to start having context to history. You know, when I said that, you know, the Barack Obama protests or the Trump protests are just throwing up Barack Obama's pictures, it's kind of silly. It represents our understanding or lack thereof understanding of what's really going on, right? Because through that president that we're championing, and this is Barack Obama specifically, through that president that we're championing, we lost the most ground under that administration. In that administration, we lost more capital than any other administration beforehand. And during his presidency, you would hear arguments that said, you know, what do you think he is, the president of all black people? And we allowed him to get away with that. And I don't want to hearken on Barack Obama, but it's that lack of understanding of politics that puts us in a position to face the upward trek that we got to face. No, he's not just the president of Black America, but he is also the president of Black America. So just being in that position, he owes us the responsibility that every other president owes us, right? So when a Democratic Party lives on our backs, when it lives on our backs, you owe me. And it's my responsibility to go get what you owe me. And I cannot go get what you owe me if I'm just championing you for your appearance, or if I'm just championing you for your swag. That ain't good enough. That ain't good enough. I know Herb is having some technical difficulties. I know he's trying to get back in. But until then, I'm going to read a few of these comments that we got because they're coming in. Trump reversed everything Obama did, and the economy excels. Raymond Hubbard, that's true. The economy excels, right? But then again, we got to understand what that means. That doesn't mean that we excel, right? He just putting more money in the hands of his friends or the hands of the 1%. The scale is lopsided. The scale is more lopsided than it's ever been. When we start thinking about the Great Depression, I think the disparity between the wealth gap was like 20 18%. It was 18% at the Great Depression. If we got any context to the Great Depression, my grandmother was alive during the Great Depression. She leveraged in the Great Depression. My grandmother had 14 brothers and sisters. During the Great Depression, all of them had to live together just to survive. They were picking up coal off the train tracks to heat their home. 14 people living in one house. So when we start thinking about that, and we say the Great Depression, the disparity was 18%. And today, 2020, 80, 90 years later, the disparity is 4% higher. So yeah, the economy grew, but in whose hands did the money go to? So that's a false truth. That's a false reality. It grew, but we're suffering more and greater under this economy. The shitty choice in the mayor and support of aldermen who don't serve us didn't help either. I agree with that as well. You know, we keep saying he never cheated on Michelle was for blacks. That's another thing though, right? That's image, that's symbols over substance. We talk about the relationship that Michelle and Barack has as if that's a valid reasoning for us to hand over our vote. It's like our expectations are so low. It's like because you can be faithful to your wife or because you can show that you love your wife, that's good enough reason for you to be the president of America? Why? Why is that good enough? That's not good enough. Oh, you made it back, brother?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. I thought my phone was charging, but apparently it wasn't. But my bad.
So Hattie says agrees. We want the lies served by the ordained Chicago black elite. Classism has a role here in marginalization of our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people gonna get to the spot and they're not trying to bring nobody with them. They're just trying to enjoy whatever trinkets they can get from being in the spot.
You know, I think that's an interesting too. In the black community, though, really, we don't even have classes, though. That's a
No. I think that we not in the reality, in the real scheme of things, we talk about economics, or we talk about finances in this country. Nah, we don't really have classism. But even amongst ourselves, in our fucking minds, and perception can be reality, we think that it's different levels to this shit. And it's like, nah, we pretty much all on the same level. It's varying degrees of broke, but pretty much all fucking broke. But we do, nonetheless, in our minds and in our behaviors, break that shit up in a way that does create the classism that Hattie's talking about.
But it's a falsehood though, and that's kind of the point, right? We got to get beyond the goddamn illusions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I live in Washington Park, right? If you're not in Chicago, just to add some context, Washington Park is on the cusp of Hyde Park and Bronzeville, right? Hyde Park and Bronzeville was traditionally the black hub of Black Chicago. For most of my childhood, they had stripped it of all of its resources, but now it's going through this rapid phase of gentrification, right? So today in Bronzeville, I think the average home price is something like $700,000. You know what I mean? King Drive being one of the staples of the neighborhood. Most of the Greystones on King Drive are like 1.2 to like $2 million, right? This is walking distance from my house. You understand what I'm saying? They use the same stores. They use the same grocery stores. They use the same schools. They're paying $2 million for their home, but they have the same amenities I have. They deal with the same level of crime that I do. You're not in it. I don't care what you pay for the house, right? What you pay for the house does not alleviate blackness. You're still dealing with the same life that I'm dealing with. So your $2 million and your investment in your home doesn't garner you anything different than my 300,000 has garnered me.
Yeah,
it's a falsehood.
Yeah, that's true. That's the reality. But again, the perception can also be reality. And so, although the actual reality is that no, I'm no different from you. If that's what I believe and that's how I behave, then it still creates these illusions of classism, and it still keeps us divided from, all coming together on what the common goal should be, because I don't even believe we're on the same team. Whether we actually are or not doesn't matter. If we could be out here in the same uniform, playing for the same damn team, and everybody knows that. If I really think I'm on another team, and I keep taking the ball from my own teammates and putting it in the other fucking goal, you know what I'm saying? Like, it does create that shit.
Yeah, it distorts the game.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of, again, that's what all of this is how all of this thrives, though. It's all like a goddamn TV show.
Yeah.
Right. It's like what's the quote? The world's a stage and everybody plays their part. And that's kind of where we at. We got to get beyond the theatrics of the bullshit.
Yeah.
We got to get beyond the theatrics because the theatrics are killing us.
Yeah.
But
we love it so much. And so you're still going to see, you know, people that you're real cool with, people that you love and respect, and they still going to post on Instagram, oh, I just dropped a bag in the Gucci store today. Okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, bucket for the other team type shit. Like, you think you play for us, right? Bucket for the other team, bucket for the other team, bucket for the other team. And I go down my feed all day and see buckets for the other team. And not just those type of, you know, superficial bullshit buckets either, but big buckets too. Like, and I don't know how to reach that segment of our population to say, listen, man, you are literally putting the ball in the basket for the other fucking team. Every time you do that shit, no matter what you think about it, no matter how you try to rationalize and say, oh, I earned this, I deserve to have a Gucci. I didn't say you didn't deserve to have whatever fucking belt you want to have, but just understand that when you fucking copying that shit, and even more when you continue to promote that shit and act like that's what everybody that come from where we come from need to have, it's a bucket for the other fucking team.
Is it that segment or is it every segment? That's what I struggle with. So I think the guy who gets the Gucci belt, the guy who gets the Jordans, right? The guy who gets the Gucci belt and the Jordans is the same guy that wants to live in Homewood Flossmoor.
Yeah,
I think the mindset is the exact same.
It is 100%.
Right.
And all I'm saying is so ultimately what I'm saying is to for me to get past complaining about that piece and saying, okay, what is the solution to that then? We can't continue to put the onus on people who aren't aware or aren't engaged or aren't currently playing for our team. We can't put the onus on them for why we not fucking scoring the ball. Clearly that motherfucker think he played for them, right? Now, how to get him realizing that he back on this team, I don't fucking know. But those of us who know we're on the same team, we still got to figure out a way to put the ball in the basket for our damn selves. And stop just saying, oh, he keep putting it down there, he keep putting it down there. He don't know nobody. Clearly he's fucking gone, right? But whenever he come back, the only way to get him back is for us to be building the right thing over here. And so I think that it's incumbent upon all of us, again, who claim to be aware, who claim to be engaged, we have to get on the same page and say to hell with everybody who's not.
But that's kind of my struggle, though, Herb. Who is the where? You understand what I'm saying? What level of awareness are we operating in, right? Because there's levels to awareness, right? Mm-hmm. So I often say that there's two options here, right? You either go conquer capitalism and rule it, conquer and rule it, or you got to completely drop out of it. You can't just elevate to up the ranks of it and be successful and bring the group with you. The group's not allowed in the door. And once you elevate up, right, you're used now as a co-conspirator, right? So either you're going to dominate it or you're going to drop out of it. Now, when I'm saying who are those that are conscious or who are those that are aware, I've never met too many people that have said that we're going to dominate this system, master it and dominate it, or we're going to drop out. We're going to take, and when I say dominate, I mean take over, because it's going to have to be a takeover. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody's just, again, it's like Monopoly. I'm not just going to unhand Boardwalk for you. Right? So at what levels are we speaking about? Who has the level of consciousness? So in moments like the moment that we're living in moments like where the streets are on fire, where the youth are engaged, I don't think they know, but they give a shit. Right? And they give a shit for whatever reason. I don't care if they give a shit because they ain't getting enough Gucci belts. Whatever the inspiration for them to be in the streets, they've been inspired to be in the streets. And that's an energy that you can harness and grow and develop. Right? Yeah. That's the energy that you can harness and grow and develop.
Yeah.
Are we trying to harness and grow and develop that? Or are we, and if we are trying to harness and grow and develop that, for what gain? Because what I see is, right, what I see that we're asking for is street names. What I see that we're asking for is a defunding of the police departments. And I'm not against that, but it doesn't stop there. Do you see anything different? Maybe I'm just not informed.
I just think when you talk about this, when you look at this thing kind of on a timeline, and you talk about generations, and you say, okay, well, since the Great Depression, you're talking about 100 years, 80, 90 years, right? And I think that in that time, you gotta kind of understand the generations that come through that, and then when they start to find a little bit of level of success, what happens to the generations coming down? And I think that this generation, this young generation now, I think they are just the first group to really be unindoctrinated by the generations before them. And I think that's just kind of a natural consequence when you continue to oppress people. You start to break up these families, until the point where the family is even no longer infecting the younger generations with this disease of white supremacy. Now, they fucked up on a whole bunch of other levels, but they also aren't being infected with this disease because there's no real connection to motherfuckers who are already infected by it. And so they kind of just wilding out. They just kind of angry, like, fuck it, right? And I think that because they also weren't connected to those generations above them who are still around are looking at them like, y'all just wilding the fuck out. Like, who the fuck taught y'all? Well, dang, nobody taught them. Y'all was supposed to be teaching them, but y'all didn't. So now they kind of doing this shit on their own. And so it's misguided right now. It's kind of all over the place. But I think that it's really important for people who are able to stand in those generational gaps. Somebody like yourself, somebody like myself, to be able to say, okay, listen, it might be a little misguided, but that energy itself is fucking useful. And I think that if not us, then I think certainly another generation behind them, they'll be able to listen to this current generation that's out here wilding out right now and say, okay, listen, we like the energy. We remember when we had the energy, but we didn't have the fucking game plan to go with it. Here's what you want to pair with that thing. So I think that, in terms of a starting point, I think we're in a good place. I think that we can absolutely improve our outcomes if we can get past some of the generational bullshit and a little bit of disagreement. But I think either way, their energy is going to ultimately be placed in the right spot, whether it's them getting a helping hand from older generations like mine, like yours, or even above ours, or it'll reach the right target in the generation that comes behind them.
So I disagree with that. That understanding of this generation. But that's a conversation we can get into later. I want to address this comment from Hattie Grandison because I think it's genius. She asks, do Chicago black folk respect power without pedigree?
I think that we always want to see something. Like we want to see something to then validate you as a leader or you as a person of power. Now, what those things that we want to see are, then becomes the question, right? Because is that I want to see that you have good ideas, that you're willing to fight for, that you're consistent, that you're compassionate, that you lead with love, that you have people who are willing to work with you and follow you, or do I want to see that you have been able to succeed in capitalism? Is that what I'm looking for? And so I think that, when you talk about that pedigree, what exactly is it? What exactly is it that you are looking for? What exactly is it that you are judging it by? And so, no, to answer the question, the long ass way to answer the fucking question, no, they don't respect power without pedigree.
So I'd ask, does anywhere respect power without pedigree? Right? And it's interesting. I've only lived a few other places, and I've not lived in them places long enough to really get a grasp of, power and the power pedigree conversation. But Chicago specifically is a who bought you kind of town. Who are you? Who you come with, and who brought you to the table kind of town. And I get it. And that's disturbing, right? But what I recognize is that most of the black politicians, because in relationships, Chicago's a black town, right? We got a black mayor. We can go down the line. We got a black dominant city council. We got a black lieutenant governor. You can go down the line. Black, blackity, black, right? But when you get to the core, who bought you to this conversation? Most of the people who got bought to that conversation is black, got bought to that conversation via University of Chicago. And the theories behind University of Chicago are not black. The ideas behind University of Chicago are not black. Matter of fact, I'd argue that some of them motherfuckers that came out of University of Chicago are the main architects of modern day white supremacy. You know, when they start to break down the understanding of how the University of Chicago has dictated how capital works in not just America, but globally. You know what I mean? When you start talking about how they just took over the neighborhood in which they're located in, they are dominant in that space. Right? And also, we have all this black representation. All of this black representation is supported by and undergirded by the University of Chicago. Not only that, if we really get to the core of who those black folks are, most of them not even from Chicago.
Right.
They implants. So they're not rooted in the history or the culture of this city specific, and they definitely not backed by anything or any substance in our communities. They're backed by the University of Chicago. You know what I mean? So in regards to does Chicago respect black folks without pedigree? I can honestly say yes or no. I can say no, they don't. But I also could say that we're in a moment in time where we got to uproot those old philosophies and those old paradigms. You know what I mean? We have to. You know, like blackness, I said this on the last show, blackness isn't about color, it's about consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's about consciousness. It's not color, it's consciousness. Mm-hmm. Right? Because no disrespect, but we know several black elected officials in this town who I wouldn't sit down and have lunch with.
Right.
I would feel embarrassed to be sitting next to them people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So how do we get beyond that space and place? But I just thought that was an interesting comment because that's a comment that most people don't address publicly in this city, but it's real. It's who bought you. And if you can't say who bought you, you can't sit at our table. You know,
that's real.
It just is what it is, man. One other thing you was trying to talk about earlier, man, was the NBA. You said something was happening with the NBA.
Yeah, so you know, there's been a lot of back and forth about, you know, whether they should start back playing again or whether they should not play either as a demonstration, but also as if for no other reason to simply not be a distraction to the movement right now. And there's a lot of different opinions. Some players saying, yeah, we're going to play. Some players saying, no, we shouldn't play. You got older, retired players like Steven Jackson, who was a friend and family member of George Floyd, coming out saying, like, nah, y'all shouldn't be playing right now. It's a distraction to the movement. Patrick Beverly, who is from the west side of Chicago, he came out and he said, look, man, if LeBron James said we playing, then we playing. And I found that to be interesting on a couple of different levels. One, in terms of, you know, where LeBron would come in on such a situation like this, in terms of his opinion on it. But then two, the power that is implied in that statement that he has, right? To imply that, okay, whatever he said we're gonna do, then we're gonna do that. Like, he has that type of influence. And if he does, I would like to see him flex it one time. If he does have that kind of power, I would like to see him flex it one time, because, and I almost feel stupid for saying what I'm about to say, but I think that if he does flex his muscle in this particular time, and whether that looks like we ain't playing at all, or whether it looks like we wait till the opening night of it and then none of us come on my call, right? And that type of thing, I think that he's such a superstar. And I think that his reasoning for doing that will be so well known that I don't think they could touch him. Like, I don't think he could pop up dead the next day, or I don't think some wild charges could just start flying over his head the next day. And so I would kind of like to see him flex that muscle one time, just to see what that would look like.
What side of the coin is he lined up on? Does he want to play, or does he doesn't want to play?
I think he says that they should play. He says they should play.
So that's what I thought as well, because I thought there was a backlash between him and Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie Irving is leading the charge for not wanting to play.
Right. And
his reasoning wasn't necessarily COVID, even though that's part of it. His reasoning was, like you said, not to distract from what's going on in the streets. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a LeBron fan in regards to like basketball. I think he's an admirable cat, and some of the stuff he does off the court. I'm not a Kyrie fan either, to be honest. And I'm not a Kyrie fan because of Kyrie's kind of behaviors. Mm-hmm. But in this sense, I think Kyrie has a point. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to the conversation about the illusion and how America thrives in the space of illusion. And one of the statements and this is by way of Matt Barnes, I didn't hear Kyrie speaking about it. Mm-hmm. But Kyrie was saying that, if we start back playing, the conversation is going to be shifted to how many points XYZ had last night, who's going to the championship, instead of focusing on what's happening in the streets. And one of the things that I do value about this very moment, and it speaks to even Dave Chappelle stand up the other day, is that the value in celebrity has almost been alleviated. You don't hear shit about them anymore, right? And not that I'm anti-celebrity, but what happens in our community, because we don't really have any black ownership, because we don't really have any black leadership, celebrities are kind of pushed into the spotlight to be the voice of every situation in our community. And oftentimes they come to the conversation with very limited information, and they're making very, very limited decisions, and they become the voices of our communities without any knowledge of the situation, right? And because of that level of influence, people fall in line with the stuff they say. And I think it's time that they get moved out of that position, you know. And I think that Kyrie standing on his square and saying, you know what, I see this, and that's not who I am and who I even should be. I think that's an admirable position to be in. But again, like you said, Patrick Beverly said, whatever Bron say we doing, we doing. And I think that becomes, that goes back to the conversation where it's either we're going to dominate this capitalist situation or we're going to move to a space in and then be co-opted. Right? And to the point of Bron, like, you think about the press Bron gets, the attention Bron gets, even when they was popping up his school or whatever, right? When you start thinking about that, everybody celebrated him for that school. And I'm not knocking LeBron for his school. But when you get to the sheer data of his school, black children are not benefiting from that school whatsoever. But then you got 3 or 4 other NBA players who've been in the league for a large amount of time, right? Jalen Rose has a school in Detroit that he's been doing for 10 years now, I think. Nobody talks about that. Nobody acknowledges that. It's a high school and college program. You know what I mean? He's fully figuring out funding for himself. It's not funded by the state. You know, it's a free charter school. Nobody talks about Jalen's school. The other point guard from Phoenix has a school, predominantly black charter school. Nobody talks about that. So at some levels, you got to start looking behind the veil. You know what I mean? You got to start looking behind the veil and asking some real questions. You know what I mean?
Jalen Rose Leadership Academy is super, super dope, man. I'm glad you shouted that out. Jalen Rose Leadership Academy, they've been on point for a minute, man, in the middle of Detroit.
Yeah, Gardner said Dwight Howard is also sided with Kyrie.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I just think that, you know, here's an opportunity for y'all to really make a stand on some altering the course of history shit. I think they have that kind of power and influence to be like, no, we ain't playing. We ain't playing, we ain't coming, period. And I think that if everybody's standing together on that shit, they could absolutely have the impact and the influence that they see. I think a lot of the black players are right now coming out talking about how they regret not standing with Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago. Like, I got another opportunity to do it again. I can do it right now. But it comes down to that.
But see, that goes back to the conversation you talked about earlier, though, Herb. The comfortable lie. They regret it because what they really was afraid of was losing capital.
Exactly. And
capital is the leash that chains you to slavery.
Exactly.
Period. Right? Yeah. Either you got to decide my family and my community is more important than this, or I'm going to be chained to this leash. It just is what it is.
That's all I've been asking people to do for the past couple of weeks, man. And anytime I had the opportunity to speak, like just be honest with yourself about what side of this thing you're on. Just be honest with yourself. You got so many people who are trying to play the fence on this thing, or they truly believe that they're on the side for freedom and liberation. But then you talk to them, and you hear the things that they are doing that is counterproductive to that. It's like you can't really. And I'm not excluding myself from that either. I still haven't found ways to completely detach or stuff like that. But I think that we have to be honest with ourselves about what the decisions we make, how they're impacting our stated goals. And if not, then we need to change our stated goals to whatever the fuck they actually are.
Let's breeze through some of these comments, man, because it's 2:08 and I got to get out of here today.
Let's go. Hattie says, whoever controls the finances controls the behaviors. Yeah, pretty much.
So I disagree. I say whoever controls the resources controls the behaviors, right? You can have all the money in the world, right? But if I own the only farm with food, what does your money matter when you need me to eat?
Right.
Right? So we get the two conflated, right? And that's why I was going back to politics is the engine that runs business because they dominate the resource, right? Half the farmers in America, they pay not to farm. Be clear about that, right? They pay you not to produce. Why? Because we want to dominate the market and how we want to dominate the market, right? Monsanto creates a seed that doesn't repopulate the very next year. So now you are dependent to come back to Monsanto to come get my seed to grow his food ever again, right? Not only does it not grow again, but it's going to destroy every other crop around it. They control the resource, right? Once the organization gets to that level of Monsanto, where they're creating shit that destroys all the shit around it, what does your money matter? You got to fuck with me. I'm the only game in town. You can't use that, because what does money represent? Well, we deem it represents freedom. Freedom to do what? Make a fucking decision, to choose. When Monsanto creates a seed like that, you don't have no more choices. It's a monopoly.
Right.
You get me?
I'm saying you control the monopoly game by having the most bread. Once you are in the position that you have the most bread, then you can create the seeds that's gonna fuck up everybody else shit. You know what I'm saying? Then you can start putting the hotels on all your shit. This whole block, man, you can't come through here without me smoking you. Like, then you can do all those types of things. Then you can start, banning people to get out of jail free cards. Or you can start selling people to get out of jail free cards. Whatever the fuck it is, like you control the game once you get into that position. I don't think it happens the other way around. Is all I'm saying.
So Gene, our resident sports expert from the Big, shout out Gene. What up, cuzzo? Gene says less than 5% of those guys make Kyrie money. They ain't trying to sit out nothing. And that's when you got to make a goddamn decision. You know what I'm saying? What's more important? Is it more important for me to secure this contract? And that's another thing they said too, right? Matt Barnes said this. He's like, most guys was afraid to make that move when they were scared that they was going to lose their endorsements. But now it's looking like the companies are still going to endorse you and support you regardless, because black is the theme of the day, right? Which in turn just kind of reinforces my understanding and idea that we operating still in this space of cowardice. They still are controlling the chains, right? And the only way to really get free is to break the fucking chains. It just is what it is.
Right.
It ain't going to be comfortable, man.
Right. I will acknowledge that it's easier for a Kyrie Irving to make such a decision than it is the 11th or 12th dude on the bench, right? He don't got generational wealth, right? He decent, but he also lives a decent lifestyle that requires him to continue making the checks he's been making. And so I get it, but again, it's a decision that we all must make as individuals to say, okay, what side of this thing am I really on? And if you choose the other side, that's fine, right? That's okay. I understand it. Just be honest with yourself if that's the decision that you're making. Catrice, black folks always want social proof, always want validation. If it's other black folks, if it's anything else, they are fine to go along. Yeah, we need proof. I need proof that you did what I haven't been able to do. Right? You came from where I came from. You look like what I look like. You doing something. I need proof that you are that valuable. But these other motherfuckers, they come to our community once every 4 years for election time. They sit down, they bring a pan of chicken, and we believe that they are whatever the fuck they say they are.
This is a great question. So Nalia. So if you can sum it up in your opinion, what do we do now? What do we tangibly do with this awareness today, tomorrow, etc.? What are the roles for my generation, Gen Z, to millennials, to Gen Xers, etc.? What we want immediately is reparations. Immediately, right? And I think we get reparations by the energy that's pervasive in the streets right now, right? Reparations made it to the political debate stage this year, right? So ever before, has that happened? Has that ever happened before? No, it happened this year because there was a groundswell, right? Most of that energy was pushed through by two people in Atlanta from the internet. That's true shit, right? Yvette Cornell and Antonio Moore pushed the reparations conversation so far and so hard that it made to the presidential debate stage for the first time ever in our history, right? So to keep this philosophy that it can't happen. One, it won't happen if we think it can't happen. But two, it's not an ask. We got to stop looking at it as an ask. It's a demand. And we got to move in the space and place where we start commanding and be the captains of our destinies. We got to start demanding. So a few weeks ago, I said that I implore everybody to go to the polls in November, right? Everybody should go to the polls in November. But when you go to the polls in November, you should vote down ballot. You should not vote for the president. Vote down ballot. And when you vote down ballot, what you'll be doing is essentially electing everybody except for the president. Leave that shit blank. Write in Minister Farrakhan. Write in Garfield. I don't give a fuck who you write in. Write in your mama's name. I don't give a shit. But what it represents is that, one, the Democratic Party relies on our backs, right? Now, be clear about what the Democratic Party wants. We talked about money and politics earlier. Well, they want that power that the Democratic Party holds. That yields a lot of power for them, right? So if you want to get back in that position to ever have power again, and you know that your entire party relies on our backs, then you got to bring us to the fucking table. You got to bring us to the fucking table. It's that fucking simple. And if we sit this one out, I know it sounds threatening because all of y'all are scared of Trump's rhetoric and shit, but if you sit this one out, by not sitting all the way out, because you got to go to the polls, because they got to be able to say, no, they showed the fuck up for the vote. They showed up for the vote. They just didn't vote for the choices that we allocated. If you do that, they will be forced to not only hear your issues, but respond to them. Because be clear, they don't want to unhand power either. So those are we could do right now, right? Continually demand reparations. Fuck some police accountability. I'm not saying fuck it, but that's a back burner issue because reparations solves all that shit. It solves it. The 40% unemployment, it solves it. Everybody be like, yeah, them niggas gonna buy Cadillacs and Jordans. You absolutely right. There's gonna be a large contingency of us who gonna buy Cadillacs and Jordans. So fucking what? Every white person don't own a business. Every Asian person don't own a business. There's gonna be a population of us that is gonna invest that money. And the very statistics say you hire people that you're comfortable with, who you look like. So industry will spawn out of that, right? But strategy-wise, go to the polls in November and don't vote for the president. Don't be afraid of Trump's rhetoric. Don't be afraid of Trump's racism. Don't. Joe Biden is just as fucking racist, right? And he's got a proven track record to show it. And whatever he does, and whatever Trump does going forward, it can't be no worse than what we've already experienced since we've been here. Our existence ain't no different. So this level of discomfort that we have now is mainly based in rhetoric. It's mainly based in rhetoric. And again, to the point I made earlier, we've been experiencing the same conditions under fucking black president. Mm-hmm. What the fuck we got to lose? Mm-hmm. So those are right now responses, you know? Read that one while I go find another one.
Jerome says, was our collective consciousness more comprehensive prior to the enactment of the civil rights legislation? I think that I won't say that comprehensive is the most important word there. I would say that that collective is the most important word there. I think that we were, by necessity, forced to be more of a collective in that time, right? We were talking about literally our lives being threatened, walking outside. That forces you to move different. That motivates you to organize in a way that the level of comfort that came after those civil rights legislation, I think that level of comfort doesn't force you to continue moving in that same way. You find this bit of a comfort, and it causes us to be a little stagnant, a little paralyzed in our movement and our mobility. And then we kind of lose some of that connectivity because we thought, okay, we've arrived on an even playing field. Now everybody can go ahead in their individual pursuits of the American dream. And I think that we lost the connectivity so much as we lost the comprehensiveness. I think we still are very understanding in terms of, how comprehensive the systems of oppression are. You talk about education, finances, justice system, everything else. I think we're understanding how comprehensive of a thing it is, but we just aren't connected, and we aren't as much of a collective as we were prior to the civil rights legislation.
So I think our collective consciousness was different, and it was based in a conscious understanding of just family, because we wasn't allowed any more options, right? I heard once before that somebody said to me that black people were the moral conscience of America. And that's really based in you not having nothing else to offer to the world than morality, because you wasn't allowed to do nothing else, right? You think pre-civil rights legislation, and you get the highest career path that a man could probably take at that time was a Pullman porter or some shit. And how many people could do that, right? The highest level of job that a woman could acquire was pretty much, I don't know, service lady, maid or some shit. You know, how many people was gonna do that? But at the end of the day, when you got to the house, your value system wasn't wrapped in materialism. Your value system was wrapped in family. Your value system was wrapped in love. Your value system was wrapped in relationship. So in that consciousness in general, you know, when you're operating from the standpoint of, I care more about my husband, or I care about my children, or I care more about my neighbor than I care about how my lawn looks, or how my or what my address says, that breeds a different level of person. You know what I mean? That's what humanity is based in. Just humanity, not blackness, just humanity. You know what I mean? My grandfather used to argue with my grandmama when I was a shorty. I remember, because me and my cousins be in the yard tearing up shit, and she'd be complaining about us being on the grass. And my grandfather would be like, you know, we raising children, not grass. And that's a different mentality. You know what I mean? So it's like the value system shifted, and we were more in alignment with the white value structure, because we began to get access to the white lifestyles. You know what I mean? And it shifted our value structure. Just like I said with the MTV analogy of showing the homosexuals on TV or airing the first reality show. They can condition your mind to accept anything, right? They can condition your mind to accept anything. And the reason why we get conditioned to accept anything, because we've yet to define our identity, right? We've yet to do that. So we identify like a white person in America would identify in, but we don't have the same accommodations as white people in America. We don't have that kind of a luxury.
Right. Alicia says, no, we can't ignore others. They will continue to destroy one another and us. Be aware. We can't leave anyone in our community behind. So let me clarify that just a little bit, Alicia. I also don't believe that we are in a position. I don't think we have the luxury to leave anybody behind. Anybody who wants to be a part of the team, anybody who's willing to work and can help, I think we absolutely need them all on board. That being said, I think that in terms of this fight for our liberation, I tend to break down our community into three ways, and I say it often. The first group is aware that there's a problem and engaged in finding a solution. The second group is aware that there's a problem, but for any number of reasons, they're unengaged in finding a solution, mainly because they feel hopeless to change anything about it. And then there's a third group that is neither aware and therefore unable to be engaged in the solution. They just kind of feel like it is what it is. They don't necessarily recognize it as a problem. It just is what it is in terms of the lifestyle they live and the outcomes that are happening in their community. That being said, when I say that the best thing for us to do is for those amongst us who believe ourselves to be aware and engaged, we got to be on the same page and just move forward and stop waiting and stop blaming the people who aren't aware or aren't engaged, saying they're the problem. Well, we got to, since we are aware and engaged, let's come together. Let's put our plans in place and let's get to work on them. I think once we can start to do that, we'll gain some momentum, we'll show some victories, and that will activate that second group of people who then will say, okay, maybe it's not as hopeless as I thought. Okay, I am aware of the problem. Now maybe I can get engaged because it's not as hopeless as I thought. And then maybe we can both figure out how to go at that third group who's just unaware and unengaged. But I definitely don't think that we need to leave anybody behind. That's not the point I was trying to make.
So read that one, knock that one out.
Von Blood says, they want Trump out of office so these sick Masons can kill us off. I feel like he's helping us in a way, giving us time to raise up. He did expose the elites and they trying to keep us distracted, but we need to unite on our own. But most of our people are too far gone in the head and still sleepwalking. Yeah, I think that people, most people in our community and most people who, they want Trump out. They're tired of his rhetoric, and emotionally they just want him gone so badly that it's not really a intellectual decision. It's more of an emotional one. And I get it. I understand it wholeheartedly. But that don't necessarily make it the best way forward for all of us. Now, in terms of who's doing it and why, I don't know.
So Catrice said, I wish we could agree on a write-in candidate to really show them who we are. Yeah, I don't know. You know, who's the most popular black person in America?
Tucson Werner.
No, that's not it. You know, Jay-Z, Kanye, Oprah, who? Not that I would give any of them people my vote, but who? Because they're not gonna win regardless.
I would say LeBron James is probably the most popular person, black person in
Brian's
America.
no, you think Brian's the most popular?
Him and Michael Jordan, more so than Jay-Z or Kanye.
All devils. Shame. But anyway, now I'm just playing.
Oh, Barack, actually.
Yeah, I agree though. But even if we can't agree, it doesn't matter if we agree or not. We can write in, like I said, our parents' names. The key is to agree just to write it in.
Okay, so Pete. Again, I'm always on some meet people where they are type shit. And I get how we opened the show talking about the demonstrations yesterday with being Barack Obama Day. But there is an ability to galvanize people. There is a willingness for people to get behind him. I think that if anybody could get their name written in a whole bunch across this country, it would probably be Barack Obama.
It would be Barack Obama. I was just thinking that. I just didn't want to say it out loud.
Then why not use it? I mean, again, you're going to come from a place of this logic thing and what's right or wrong. I'm coming from a place of what could get the results that you're speaking of. Who could do that? That's the question that Catrice was saying.
Because words carry their own energy, Herb. Right? That's why people write affirmations, right? They get up and they read them goddamn affirmations, and after a while they stop believing that shit. So it's hard for me to write, "Hey Satan, come into my house." I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
You gotta focus on what the real win is. The real win is a whole bunch of black people going into the polls collectively and unified and writing down a name that we know ain't even on the fucking ballot. And all of us doing the same thing at the same time. Now, if that write-in was motherfucking Larry Hoover, it would be perfectly okay. So, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Barack is definitely the most popular, though. Nationwide. Absolutely. And globally, he's the most popular.
I think we should utilize that then.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's just not in my consciousness. What I've been doing traditionally for the last probably 3 elections, I've written in Minister Farrakhan. I know he don't got a chance in hell, but that's who I write in. That's my go-to. You know what I mean? Yeah, so, but the key, like I said, the key is not necessarily who, but how, right? It's doing it specifically, or the what, not who, but the what. It's all us going in there with a unified act. You know what I mean? A unified act to say, yeah, we came here to vote. We're going to vote for the judges. We're going to vote down ballot. We're showing up. Right, so when you go back and check out the polls, the numbers represented, we showed up. We was here, right? We just didn't choose to pick from that lot. We just didn't choose to pick from the lesser of two evils anymore, right? So how the chips fall in that specific fight? Let the chips fall. Who gives a fuck, right? And then what happens is the Democrats are going to see that they lose because they're gonna lose anyway. Let's be clear, right? With all the rioting and all the shit, all the upheaval that's going on in the streets, right? 30% of white folks still support Trump publicly. That's the public people, right? So that's like 70 million white people. You know what I mean? So when you look at the sheer math of the breakdowns of the Dems versus the Republicans, the shit is split in half down in the middle of the line of the country, right? I don't want to say all white people, but the vast majority of white people vote Republican, right? The vast majority of everybody else votes Democrat. But when you do the numbers of that, when you do the numbers on that game, we voted a 98 to 99% clip of Democratic votes, right? So the minute we drop out of that shit, that whole party sinks to oblivion. It don't work. If the shit is split 50-50 and 25% of this 50 says, I'm straight on this shit, you can't fight no more. You know what I mean? Half of your body has been paralyzed. It's over for you, fam. So you want this to be powered up again. You know what I mean? You got to leverage our ask. Right? Our ask have to become viable. From that point forward, every ask that we have has to be viable because you need us to obtain your level of power. It's just that simple, right? But if we keep going in and going along to get along, or being so afraid of the big bad man or the big bad wolf or the boogeyman, we're going to continue to get fucked, right? And this ain't no ode to Biden. This ain't no ode to the Democratic Party. I don't give a shit about neither of them, right? It's an ode to us achieving our goals. Again, the illusion is so strong, the lie is so strong, and it's so pervasive that we believe the symbols rather than the substance. How many times have you heard our ancestors died for us to have the right to vote? Not near one of my ancestors died for me to have the right to vote. My ancestors died for me to have freedom. And if voting was one of the strategies we're going to use, then that's what we're going to use. If I got to shoot a motherfucker, then that's what we're going to use. If I got to steal some shit, then that's what we're going to use. We're going to use whatever we got to use to get to this goal.
Right.
The voting part of the shit is not the goal. It's a strategy. So let's use it as such. And if we ain't using it as such, then it's fucking useless. Period.
I'm good with it, man. Anything else you want to hit?
Nah, man, we've been on here for an hour and a half, so we got to run, man. So, like always, man, we appreciate y'all rocking with us. Somebody said earlier that Herb had that Teddy Riley connection. He's going to get that together by Wednesday. And again, man, share the broadcast, man, again. And this is a communal conversation, right? This is a communal conversation. We know we got to expand the ranks of this conversation, and it works, right? Like I said earlier, it was two internet personalities that pushed so hard that the reparations conversations made it to the Democratic debate stage. Now you got Bob Johnson in front of the reparations conversation like he created the shit. I don't really care about that, but my point is that this new mechanism, this new distribution channel of digital media is allowing us to have voices and impact that we've never had before. Mm-hmm. Let's use this to leverage in the new awakening of blackness. Let's use it, right? We can't deny the fact that if you in the know, you know that reparations conversation, regardless of who's doing it before. The way in which it was done within the last 2 years by these two people shook the conversation, right? And it's continually shaking the conversation. Y'all know about George Floyd because of digital telephones. It's shaking the conversation. Let's use the technology as part of that strategy. That's it. So in doing that, share this broadcast. If you believe in it, if you don't fucking push it. I don't give a shit. But if you rocking and if you believe in the philosophies that we employ, share the shit. Engage your friends. Have conversations with your parents about going into that goddamn ballot box and not putting Joe Biden's name on that goddamn vote. You got to be active in this fight. Period. You got something you want to add, Herb?
Nah, man, that's good for me, man. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. We greatly, greatly appreciate y'all always tuning in. Again, thank y'all for sharing the conversation. Thank y'all for adding y'all's input to the conversation. It's always valued. It is always appreciated. We will see y'all back here Wednesday at 1 p.m. Until then, man, y'all be safe out there. For Tucson Werner, my name is Herb Howard. Peace.
Peace.